listening to Inclusive AF with Jackie Clayton and Katie Van Horn.
Hi, Jackie.
Hi, how are you doing, Katie Van Horn?
I am good, Jackie Clayton. Hey, Inclusive AF podcast, here we go. It's time to start this party because, we're spending all kinds of quality time together this week. It's actually, you all don't know this that are listening, but Jackie and I have been on hiatus from each other, unfortunately, because we've both been traveling and working way too much. So we haven't seen each other. And now this week we're trying to record a couple of episodes in a row. So we're getting all kinds of quality time together. So
we're caught up.
Yeah, if you all hear us recording on Saturday, please know that if we start like bickering, it's just because we're sisters and that's what we do.
That's
and
right.
We like to
That's
bicker.
right.
It's fun. It works out well for everyone. But welcome to everyone. We have some amazing guests with us today. And so I'm going to, without further ado, turn it over to Tracey Lovejoy and Shannon Lucas to introduce themselves, and then we'll jump right in.
Katie, Jackie, thank you for having us with you. And thank you for jumping in and making me giggle right away. I so appreciate it. My background, I come straight out of graduate school into the corporate environment, where I went from studying social science and anthropology into being a researcher in technology, totally a random connection. Ended up spending 12 years at Microsoft, where I love to study why do people do what they do? How do we embed this knowledge into innovation? But really my love was always that people side. And so once I started being able to be a manager of individuals and then later of teams, that's where I started to light up. I fell into a coaching class because I wanted to use this as a way to grow my leadership. And it was a very disruptive moment in my life. The things you hear, like the clouds part, the angels were singing of this is something you're meant to do, which I was not looking for. So after about 3 years staying at Microsoft, once I started that path, I finally left, started a consultancy. That was in 2013. And once I went into consultancy, where I was working with organizations, supporting leaders, I wanted to figure out who do I specifically want to work with. And so I started doing a research project because that's what researchers do. And I was thinking about who are my favorite clients that I've had. At that point, I'd been coaching for 5 years. And there was this incredible set of trends that was a through line. They were people who set huge audacious goals that they were scared at first to talk about, but then they'd come back to our coaching session next time and they had totally gotten on the track and they had done their homework and they were so excited to make big, powerful change. And as I started to look in the literature for people like this, who are those fire starters? Who are the people at the front end of innovation? I didn't see anything on the bookshelves. I saw the books about how to do innovation, but this time in 2015, who they were within it was not much talked about. And so then I started a second research project of really studying them. In come Shannon Lucas. Because at the time, she was one of my very favorite clients. And I was like, hey, Shannon, I'm doing this research project studying people just like you. Would you be willing to let me interview you for that project? Over
Cliffhanger. Did I say yes or no? I'm going to go back. I have a degree in art history, but when I graduated, if you could spell TCP/IP, you were allowed to be a network engineer.
I remember that year.
That was a very good year if you could spell TCP/IP. So I also ended up working at Microsoft, although we never crossed paths there. And just really quickly ended up following the tech career, always thinking, getting further away from the tech and more into the why. Like how are people using this? Why are they using it? When I landed my dream job and I got to build out an innovation program from scratch at one of the world's largest mobile telephony companies, Vodafone. The hypothesis that we were building that innovation program on was that we wanted to find the natural positive troublemakers all around the world, because Vodafone's truly global, unite them, connect them, help them stop reinventing the wheel, give them a shared language, some processes, and remove as many barriers as we could and get that flywheel going. We were wildly successful and I was super naive about the success, honestly. We were wildly successful, tens of millions in year revenue, 12% ARR uplift for companies that went through our program, completely changing who we were talking to from IT and procurement to the C-suite. But coming into year 4, I was burning out. Now we had from 8 ragtag innovation champions to this certified, gamified, CEO sponsored innovation champion program. And I was traveling around the world trying to unlock the problem of why, even though it was a volunteer program, you could not be voluntold to participate in this, people showed up differently. And I was like, if I could just double, let's say it was 100 at that point, if I could just double the 30% to the 60%, we would more than 10x the impact. Like, it would have just unlocked such insane potential. I was burning out. I was a single mom at the time too. And my college roommate, when I studied art history, was back in my life. And she said, have you ever thought about a coach? And I was like, no, I've never thought about a coach. And literally someone compared auras and matched me with Tracey. And here we are today. And so when she sat me down and said, can I interview this? It was like being hit by a bolt of lightning. I remember where I was sitting. It explained my entire life. I was like, oh my God, they don't want change. Like, they operate differently. I really didn't understand. And I had created this external executive community. There was handpicking change leaders that I thought were like me. And I was like, well, co-create it. I don't want to own another community, right? And the same thing was happening there. So I said to Tracey, I said, I've been thinking about doing a retreat with these people in Northern California with some hot tubs and good wine, some good food, and, recharging because this group needs it. And I said, do you want to do that with me? And she said yes. And so that was the beginning of our company. I stayed in the corporate world leading innovation efforts at Cisco and Ericsson after. In 2020, we came together and write a book, started our podcast that year too. Turned out to be a great year to write a book. So our book is Move Fast, Break Shit, Burn Out. You can see it behind Tracey, The Catalyst Guide to Working Well. And so I hope your listeners can hear that we are very spiritually aligned with the work that you're doing.
Awesome. So I did not realize both of you are Microsofters. So I am a prior GoDaddy. So we have a lot of mutual connections. All of the folks that moved over to GoDaddy after they were spent one of their lifetimes in Microsoft. So we have some mutual connections for sure. I love all of this. So tell me a little bit about, how do you identify who those people are that are the breakers or the, whatever you call them?
Yeah. One way is
We
that
call them catalysts, just for super clarity. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. But one way is you can just ask people around you, who are the folks that you think are starting the ideas and jumping into action? And a lot of the time, people will start pointing to the same people. So once you begin to look in the organizational setting, they're kind of known, if not talked about. And breaking down from the research, we know the key attributes that really make who we are. So you can hear it in the way we're talking about it. We are folks that create lots and lots of ideas of how to make the world around us better by just walking around and experiencing the world. And so we're doing it then at a pace that's a little faster than everyone else, putting together that information. And once we have this idea, we really do, even if we haven't articulated it to ourselves well, we see a vision of how the world could be better. So it's not just it's broken, it's broken, it's broken, but wouldn't it be better if it were like this? And before sometimes we can say that out loud, we are tripping into action to make it so. Often, did I just describe you, Jackie?
I get nervous because I'm the type of person who I don't want to deal with anyone. I don't want to deal with anyone. Someone's going to try to put those things together.
She's
and
so
then
full of malarkey right now, whatever.
So true. I
Yeah.
can't help it if I'm the nicest. It doesn't mean that it comes from a fun place. I can't help that.
Right.
That's just my rear end.
Right.
I'm a nice Southern woman. However, sometimes it's like a mood thing. Like I'm like I'd have to figure out when I woke up in the morning, I think I can do it today. Do I have enough energy today? And then there's some days where it's like, nope. I mean, literally, I think one of my favorite times, Katie, and you remember this I know you remember this. It was me and Katie. And then there's another half of me and Katie, and there's John and Robin. We were all out, we were doing all this stuff. And then literally we were at a table for like an hour, nobody talking. We were all sitting like this at this table for like an hour. And people kept walking by. Do you remember, Katie? And people were walking by, and I was like, I don't want to talk to them because that guy was looking for you earlier. I was like, I don't want to talk to him. Okay, don't look at him. So we're all just like sitting. So it's like a roller coaster, but now it's like, maybe it's because I've been connecting with the wrong people and I'm exhausted. I think there's the right people and the wrong people based on what you're saying.
100%, 100%. So I'm just going to finish the definition and I'll come back to that, Jackie. So that people can sort of self-identify on the thing. Tracey was like, we move into action. We can't help ourselves from moving into action. And Jackie, just sort of building on your point, we haven't always primed those around us for the action that we're about to do. And as Tracey said, sometimes we don't even realize that that's what we've done. The research also says we show up with an experimentation mindset. We have to, because almost by definition, everything we're doing is net new. So that level of ambiguity isn't like, I don't know, I'll start a podcast, I'll figure it out. The world needs the podcast, right? The last piece is interesting because it's, people will describe us. This is the one where it's like not how we self-identify, but how other people identify us, which is they'll say that they're comfortable with risk and ambiguity. Now, if you ask Catalyst, and there's a range, so like I am an adrenaline junkie, like motorcycle, rock climbing, skydiving, all the things. Tracey's a researcher, so like we do come with different personalities and relationships to risk. But more, it's like if you ask the Catalyst, or the Catalyst might ask you or say, it's risky not to do this thing. So it's not that I don't see that there's not risk, but I see the bigger risk actually in not making that change. And so going back to what you're saying, Jackie, there's so many, and I was going to say this sort of at the beginning of, Tracey was like, if you ask people in the organization who those people are, they might all point at the same person, but they also might point at the same person because they're like, that person is a fucking pain in the ass. They are constantly breaking stuff. They're totally unself-aware, right? And so we can have this reputation where we are actually causing more friction in the system because we don't understand. That's why when Tracey shared it with me, that bolt of lightning, I was like, oh my God, no wonder I've been causing so much friction in the system. And so
I love that you said that. They've been moving to doing performance reviews like that. Like, oh, who's the person who does all the stuff? And I'm like, now that doesn't mean that that's positive. That does not mean, I mean, people are like, oh, that's the real influencer within your organization. So let's figure out what they're doing. It's like, that doesn't mean that's good. Always.
It doesn't mean that's good. And so we're called troublemakers and problem children and all of the things. And we can wear the badge of disruptor like it's a good thing, but that's not often how people are actually, what they're saying about us behind our back, right?
Breaking dishes.
That's it. Nailed it. So your thing about the energy though is spot on, because there's a big piece of us that are catalysts, that are energy givers. Like we're putting energy into a system to create change. During our first retreat that we were talking about, one person was like, I don't know if I belong here. After people were doing intros, she's like, I'm really an introvert and I just feel like everyone here with everything they've done, they must be so extroverted. So we just stopped. We're like, hey, time out. Who here's an introvert? Half the people raise their hand. And then there's just this emotional management, like we call, like my favorite one is we're the Sherpas of change. And I think now related to like an inclusivity piece, there's a huge emotional toll. There's an emotional labor. If you want to create change, those people don't need to create change. They're not asking for the change. So if you want to create change, you have to bring them along. And so then, Jackie, we get depleted. The burnout is real. It's really high in this sort of population. And so then you're just at your table with your friends going, I just need another wine. Don't talk to me.
Yeah. This feels like a safe place.
But I was going to say, but I think that's part of it. Is it sounds like what you're doing is actually building a community of these folks that can feel safe.
That's
and
right.
Can, come together and have like the examples Jackie gave you. Yes, I do remember it. It's actually happened a few times when we've all been at conferences because we go 300 miles per hour. Here's what we should do. Here's what we should change. Here's how we should change the world and make it better. And then we hit a wall and all of us sit at a table and go, oh my goodness, I can't talk to one more human today. But I love that you're creating this community. So what do you do with this energy, with these folks that are doing this work, and are these troublemakers and catalysts?
So I'd love to build on the comment that you said. We build community really intentionally in two ways. So, our goal is to help accelerate big, bold change in the world sort of through empowering catalysts. And so we look at catalyst leaders because it is lonely at the top. Like you think it's lonely at the top, it's really lonely when you're a catalyst leader. A lot of us don't ever get the self-awareness to actually make it that far. That's true. And also we can be noisy and disruptive and all the things. So we have a catalyst leadership trust where we support the executives and create that safe space. And this is the community I wished I had been able to have access to when I was an EVP in the tech world, right? Because I couldn't share all of my thoughts and uncertainties about the future with my peers. They would have been like, you don't know what you're doing? And I would have been like, well, not really, because it's all net new. You were asking me to unlock a new market that you guys have never unlocked. Who has that playbook? Nobody does. So getting to create the safe space for them is like, that is God's gift to me. I was just saying to Tracey, like, I'm just so grateful to be able to bring that into the world. We also work with organizations, though, to help them. So you asked a great question, Katie, at the beginning, which I want to let Tracey answer, which is, how do you help organizations identify these people? And just the bringing them together, I still get goosebumps. So like, we create these like networks, informal networks across the organization, but when they're in class, they're also with catalysts from other industries, from other countries, from other backgrounds. And we tell them, okay, the skills improve, all 20 skills improve every single class. It's a phenomenal high impact class. The thing that the catalysts love every single time, and it just happened today, I was talking with Sarah, the program sponsor for them. She said, you told me that that would be my number one thing, is being in community with the other catalysts. Because it's not just a safe place, it's energy giving. She's like, we were doing so much work. We were doing this in addition to our day job. And she said, but the second we got together and the second that we left, I had more energy. So, but Tracey, I'd love for you to talk about how we find them.
We have an assessment that people can answer that align to the 6 attributes that we know, kind of make us who we are. And so we can use that with groups. And this is what we use in organizational settings, so that we can look at it and kind of get that sense of where do people fit on that scale of catalyticness. And then we build out groups that begin to work on strategic problems and ideas that the organization really wants to make so. And so we're training the catalysts to see themselves so that they can recognize when they were disruptive in ways that were positive versus negative, right? The ways that we want to be.
You're going to tell the people.
What's that?
You're going to tell the people that time.
Right, exactly. That, when you got angry and yelled at everyone, that probably wasn't the way to keep your job.
That is hilarious.
Understand why you were mad.
Like cracking up one time. We use Lattice for performance feedback, and I will never forget. It was like, Jackie, you haven't given Gordon feedback in like 3 months. I was like, Lattice, you need to talk to Gordon. Like, I don't know why you're talking to me. It was probably not.
Yeah. So then we can find these folks and we build out cohorts that also fit within the values of the organization, because someone who's a catalyst won't always be as successful in one organizational climate than they will in another. So Shannon was, she's speaking about her time as executive vice president with a 100-year-old Swedish company. 140, which has a set of social norms. It has a pace that it's ready for, right? Versus someplace like GoDaddy or Microsoft, where the pace and the cultural values can be really different. And so to your point, Katie, of like, how are we building community? We're building community in ways that are going to work within that organization to not only connect the catalysts, but connect them to the executives and the strategy. Because what do catalysts want to do? They want to make change. They don't just want a leadership development program that's like, learn, what your values are and what your goals are. They want to take their skills and their energy and dive in and be able to show the impact that they've made. So their virtue is awesome. Yeah.
So the concept, like, you do this assessment. What about the folks that are not catalysts? What do you do? Like, what happens to them?
They get promoted to guest.
Okay, Jackie.
No? Oh, okay.
Yeah, she's referring to our. I worked at Target for a while, and that was our not appropriate in any way, shape, or form HR. If you were not working out, you got promoted to a Target guest. So yeah, it worked out. So all right.
Jackie, yeah, it's a permanent phrase now for me. Anytime.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't. Yeah.
within any cohort, like Shannon was talking about, there can be a spectrum of what it is to be catalytic. And so we're looking at not only where you fall on that spectrum. And so there's folks that we can say they're just not going to fit, right? They have identified that their relationship to change is not a positive one, or they feel like they can't really contribute new ideas. And so there's some things that will make it that you're not going to be invited to be part of a Catalyst cohort. But there's not one way, right? Like there's the range. And so we end up having beautifully diverse groups. So for those who aren't a Catalyst, they don't participate in those programs.
And we work with the organizations to provide training too. If you think about a normal distribution curve and the catalysts are on the sharp end, you have the early adopters after, and there's probably a range of people who, the beautiful thing is, like, for any catalyst program, you have to nominate yourself. So there's already a self-selection process there. And this is different from a lot of high potential programs where it's like, did you crush your KPIs and were you good at managing up? Right. And so this is like, hey, I've been flying under the radar because the impact I drive is across the organization in silos with something that nobody had an exec sponsor for. Right. So there's a self-selection process, but surely we want to also then the people who raise their hand and are interested in supporting it, we're going to bring the same tools, the same language. Like, the things that we're teaching Catalyst are helpful for everyone. They're just essential for Catalyst because we'll lose people as soon as we leave I got a vision, I'm moving into action.
It's really, I like that you said that, and it's especially hard at startup companies. I think we say that we're a startup, but I always think about various startups, and it's hard when you're trying to change multiple things, when you have multiple catalysts that want to do multiple things, because you have the autonomy to be able to do that. That's just what stood out. I guess, no need to respond. Just a thought.
Oh, we feel you. As you know, we came together officially in 2018, and we've been very excited the last 2 years. Like, one of our celebrations is that we've had the same strategy for 2 years straight. Like, that was a huge deal, because our original sense of kind of our mission statement was that we give 360-degree support for Catalyst, because we're naming a category, right? And so we love Catalyst in the world, and we want to help them in all the ways. That's not a really good way to scale a business.
No.
So our catalytic desire to serve and to really help folks that we're seeing have deep needs and often are in pain has gotten us to exactly that same issue that you're pointing to, Jackie. We feel you.
Got it. Okay.
So you mentioned something earlier, Shannon, about, when you are raising your hand or calling something out that maybe isn't working, and how sometimes that is not received, or people, have a perception of that because of the direct communication style or whatever that might be. Is part of the work that you do also just helping to manage some of those communication tools, or whatever you want to call it, because, to get people onto the bus that you're trying to drive, to get people to come to whatever similar conclusion that you have? Are those some of the tools that folks learn with this program?
Yeah, totally. So there's a thing that's called the Catalyst formula, which is probably helpful to get out right now, which is vision, action, iteration. This is how we move through the world. And without intentionality, we move through those cycles insanely fast, like different levels of fastness, as Tracey was saying, but like catalysts in general are much faster than the average bear. That causes a lot of problems. So that's the name of our book, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burn Out. That's our default position if we're not bringing some intentionality to our process. So the first thing we have to help them understand is, like, just the awakening that they're catalysts, and the understanding the difference. Like, oh, I do need to treat and engage with people differently because they're not moving at my speed. They will have felt that intuitively. But then teaching them the self-awareness to know when they're losing people and when they're like moving off of vision too quickly. So a lot of what we're teaching them is to just slow down the process and giving them the tools. The communication piece, we have basically like 1 whole week out of 6 weeks, and it's really more than that in the end, of communication. Because and it makes us, like, this is my thing. I always want to like poke my eye out with a stick. It's like, it makes me slow down so much. Like, I have to say that a 10th time to the team to help them understand, but I will. The other interesting pivot that we try and help them understand, though, is a lot of the journey is really about more deeply listening. And so it's great to have a seed of an idea, but the first thing you need to assess is your team, organization, whatever, ready for that kind of change? Like, what's the organizational appetite? And so we talk about a lot of like a listening tour and then a co-creation tour. And just this week, someone in the class and group coaching was like, well, I really need to figure out how to sell my manager better on my idea. And I'm like, we need to stop that language, right? Where's the win for your manager? How are you helping your manager? And so this is the part where we can come across as like arrogant and we're doing it in service. We feel so misunderstood. We're like, I just want to make the world better. But if we aren't like really paying attention to first self and then sort of that social, using our EQ, we really, again, that sends us straight into burnout because we've just increased resistance in the system.
Absolutely. And I would guess, like, you mentioned EQ, and that was my other question. If folks are self-selecting, you would hope that they would have a little bit of, awareness of themselves, or, that kind of thing, to be able to say, yes, I am a catalyst that might somehow transition or translate to emotional intelligence, that type of thing. And both of you are shaking your heads no, so I'm going to go with probably not the case. Okay. Say
Yeah,
more.
it's not. In getting to study people who are this way in the world, our emotional intelligence is really variable. When we study executives, the folks that are part of our Catalyst Leadership Trust, this is a key area that we see difference, is that they're so good at first always walking in and saying, why not? Not just why, but why not? Why isn't it like this? And then they listen. Our natural instinct is to see and do, as Shannon said, vision, act. We have to intentionally pause. And so there was a woman that Shannon mentioned, we're teaching one of our classes right now. We teach it twice a year. And she shared, you are helping me see all the ways I've been doing it wrong.
Oh,
We help her feel seen and validated and not broken, and help her see that there's a way that she can be who she is, fully own it, not have to hide it, and not keep breaking the relationships around her. And you're exactly right in naming it out, Katie. EQ is at the heart of that.
well,
I wish I would have met all of you about 25 years ago. But sorry, Jackie, go ahead.
no, yeah, maybe 25, 30. So I'm just thinking the thing that stands out for me, like, and I'm wondering how, maybe it's during the assessment. I think what's standing out for me is with people that are neurodiverse and catalysts, and there has to be a little bit of a high crossover. And I was just talking about it today, like, I have ADHD, and it's very similar. Like when you meet somebody who, I'm not an expert, I'm not a therapist, I'm not offering any advice, but there is always like, when you're high functioning autistic in one of these, whatever labels, people get mad about it, but work with me here. Then sometimes it can be confused for one of these, like I'm a catalyst kind of, I'm a catalyst adjacent, but then their breaking point is at different levels. And it probably, I think I was in my 40s where someone used a different phrase that said, oh, I think you're highly sensitive to these types of things. Like use that phrase. And then I was like, what? And then I was like, oh, I am highly sensitive.
Did you read the Highly Sensitive Person book?
No, because that was scary. No, I wasn't trying to learn about it. I,
Okay.
took their word. It's much easier to just take their word for it.
I get it, and I cried my way through it. So,
Yeah.
and my husband, but it helped my husband contextualize and understand. He already supported me that way, but sort of like, I mean, we often get emails from people about just how seen they feel and what a relief it is to not be broken, to Tracey's point. And there's an overlap we see anecdotally with all of these different sensitivities between the neurodivergence that we were talking about, for sure.
That just seems to go in there. That's what I just think about. But that's part of, I think, what is so exciting when you meet people and think, oh, there's something wrong with me. And I think even as you learn, it takes a really long time to realize, like, we are both looking at the same thing and seeing two completely different things. there's so much that goes to that, and I don't think we teach that. And that's okay. Like that is why diversity and inclusion is so important, of understanding that now we can get a better picture of what it is and how we can move forward. And I think it's been such a toxic journey of what leaders look like, that people try to fit into this box and they have absolutely no idea where to go, because they were like, I don't want to do that part. Does that mean I'm not a leader? And it's like, oh, well, it depends on who you talk to, I guess, and where they're at.
Completely agree.
Can I ask you a question, Jackie, building on that? Because this is something that's come up recently, which is those different perspectives. Like we're looking at the same thing and there's different perspectives, and maybe one is more right than the other. I don't know. Like, I'm thinking particularly in trying to build inclusivity and thinking about systemic patterns that we bring in. And I'm just wondering, like, do you guys have advice for how to navigate that complexity? Because I go back to the emotional labor. It's like, am I thinking about it in every interaction or only when it starts to become problematic? Like how much, yeah. How do you guys think about that?
I will tell you, the thing that I saved me a lot of grief is going into is accepting other people's truth. And that's it. It makes it, you're free now. Instead of thinking I have to fully understand exactly what it's like being, little baby Kathleen Catholic girl at age 12. I have to know what that feels like, looks like, smells like, in order for me to understand 45-plus-year-old Katie. And you don't. If I just told you this was hard, so it's like, for me, that's what seems to be helping. It allows us to continue moving forward and not getting stuck in the past or stuck in trauma. It's just so when someone says, I hate Texas because everybody there is racist, and you're like, oh, okay, now I know the lens that you're going through. So what are we going to do moving forward? And you have to keep reminding myself, remember, they think everyone here is racist. So that's the lens. And we just have to keep moving forward with that. That's what has worked. What do you say, Kate?
Yeah, I think it's a listening. I recently attended this extremely random luncheon. I don't even know how to describe it. And it was this gentleman who was a part of the translators slash and interrogators over in Iran. And so he has done, 6 gazillion interviews of different people, and he talks about some of these like context clues and how, you put some of these things together. And so it goes to what you said, both of you said earlier about listening, but then it is also taking those tidbits and not just going, okay, yeah, it's Catherine, Catholic schoolgirl in 4th grade, to be clear. But like taking that, okay, she grew up, she was Catholic, or she went to Catholic school, or, oh, okay, well, what did that do? So taking the tidbits of something that, someone's telling you to then build off of it later. And I think that's, in my mind, part of it is just understanding are you listening intentionally? Are you listening in a way that is engaging with the person, not just like the repeating back what you heard, but truly saying, you said this, what does that mean to you versus what it might mean to me versus, how someone else might perceive it. So I think the listening piece, I say listening probably 600 times every episode, because I think that for all of us is such a critical skill to build. But that would be my response, like just being able to listen and truly hear what people are saying.
Thank you both.
Yeah, of
No,
course.
I appreciate that. I think that should be your next book, or maybe me and Katie will write a book. It's like the fallacy of empathy. So many people get that wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and let me tell you, my executive producer, I call my husband my executive producer. So my executive producer, like, will say, do you want like chicken, like artichoke pizza? I'm like, no, that's gross. He's like, well, why not? And it'd be like, you don't have to worry about why not. Like, what does it? We're just getting into an argument over something really stupid, and we can't move forward. And it's the same where somebody's like, I want to make this change. Do you want to make it? No, I don't think that's a good change. Well, why? Well, now it doesn't matter. We're just not going to move forward. Now we're not going to move forward, and I hate you. When it could have just been like, oh, different. We could have moved to something adjacent because you're not accepting that this is how I feel about it. And that's okay. We don't have to feel the same way, but we can still find ways that we can connect if we want to.
I hear that and I'm like, I want to be that awesome, Jackie. Remember when I was introducing and telling my story, like for me, the through line is like understanding people and like, why does it work like that? So not being able to ask the, what, oh, you don't like artichokes? You don't like the texture? That I get.
Yeah.
Right. But until I have a little bit of that, it's like painful. It's like there's a book I've been reading and I don't get to read the ending. So I hear you and I'm like, can I challenge myself? And I'm like wanting to like rock in my chair, imagining just hearing all people from Texas are racist and we're just not going to touch that. I'm like, we're not.
Yeah.
No.
That's the fun part of bias. You can make up a different story every single day, knowing that none of them are true.
Yeah.
Right.
And you can just make it up and just, you'll feel better. You'll feel
You're not wrong, but I'm like challenging my own bodily response.
better. Yeah.
I think it is a really interesting question that Tracey and I actually have never really had this conversation about, which is also like, I feel like there's a dial, like I'm using my pen to like make a gauge sort of thing, because like maybe on the pizza, it doesn't matter. Maybe on the, racism in a whole state in the country, it does matter. But so that's one metric. And then the other metric is sort of like, what capacity ultimately does that person have to change? Because they may be saying right now, I'm good. I'm never going to eat that pizza again. But there
Right.
might be a place where, the skills that we're teaching Catalyst is to find where the shared value is. You know what I mean? So I don't know that I can extrapolate that to an artichoke chicken pizza, but I think there's places in change where you're
I
just
think
like,
you can.
I'm invested. You think you can or you can't?
I think you can. I think you specifically, Shannon Lucas, can.
Yeah.
But I just think about how, like, I think you're right. I think we're saying the same thing. It feels like it to me, where it's like we just have to get to where we can connect, especially at first.
Yes.
And what I was first nervous about when we first started talking about having conversations, to me, it was like, oof, how can you get all these things together? Then I was researching and learning more, and it's like, oh, okay, so we can find the gray area and a comfort in that gray area. And I think that's what I kind of got from just the information that's online and finding out about Catalyst and Catalyst calculations and the things that you were implementing. And because it was like, well, it's one of those things. Again, it's a moment where it's like, well, I feel seen, but I've never met these people. So I don't know if they saw me or why they knew, but there must be something to that. And then it's like, okay, so what does that mean? Where else are we? And of course, because I do work in a people function, I'm always thinking about the world of work and how we can make it better, make people feel what will it take to get somebody to be able to do their best work? And can we ever? And I think for some, this might be the answer.
Yeah, that's actually where I would love for us to go next. And I know we don't have a ton of time. And so I would love to say, like, how do you transition or how do you take this information, pull this team or this group of individuals together and create positive change in an organization and kind of, harness whatever, leverage whatever word you want to use to create that positive work environment?
I'd say the top level word I'll throw in, and it's such a beautiful, connection point across, is curiosity. Rather than me, I was kind of playfully with you, Jackie, saying I can't ask why. Why is a hard question because it really does put people on the defensive at times. Mm-hmm. But to say like, oh, that's so interesting. What's up with chicken and artichoke pizza? If we can get to the point where we're really interested in where someone else's point of view is, that's what allows us to not just find the shared value, as Shannon said, but to create that understanding of what is it that we all really want to be doing here. And do we have agreement on the steps that we'll take and the type of change we want to move in? The need for change today is no longer up for debate. Every organization on the planet constantly is in a place where change has to happen. And so the more we can help. And the reason we love working with catalysts is kind of the front end. If you think about the adoption curve, they're the very early folks that have that positive relationship to change. And so we see them as the fireflies around the organization to begin to create that spark that then you can have that tipping point. And so you'd ask both of you in different moments of like, so what about the rest of them, right? It's the infection that happens as that continues to grow. And so if you can have those people with that positive relationship to change come in with that genuine curiosity to say, let's make it better for all of us, and let's include your perspectives on what that is, especially if you're resistant, then I think that's the magic.
I love that.
I would just add on to that. The curiosity adds a sensing capability, and one of the problems we can have as a catalyst is like this idea that this is the best idea. This is the vision of the change that we have to push through. And two things that we teach in the class, you use the word listening, we use it all the time too. Expectation alignment is the other big one, because it helps you navigate. It's like we tell them the best idea isn't the best idea. The best idea is the winningest idea, the one that's going to have the chance to actually make it in this cultural context. And the only way you're going to do that, Katie, is by listening as you go along and being able to adapt. And that unlocks so much stuff in the way that Tracey, because then it becomes inclusive. Right? We're teaching them that they have to bring those other people, and that's where that ripple effect that Tracey was talking about comes from.
Yeah, like the equivalency, or like what I'm thinking about is like the folks that we always think of as like our culture keepers, or the folks that are able to really drive change, whether they're in leadership or not. Because that was kind of one of the other thoughts I was having is, what if they're not in leadership, or how does it work if they're not in leadership? But they don't need to be. I mean, if they are someone that kind of has that ability to bring people along and to bring people, tell the right story and, have those right conversations, they can drive a ton of positive, or I guess on the other, on the invert, some not so positive changes depending on, what's going on. But I also thinking about what are those one or two, and, the whole concept of, here, this is our vision. Let's go do it. Let's take that action. Let's iterate on it. I think that's one also that so many companies could just take that alone and think about it, because I think so many folks, they go, oh, here's what we decided, so we're going to do it. And even if it crashes and burns halfway through the process, oh no, but we said we're doing it, so we have to still keep going this way. Like, you guys were saying our we have a 3-year plan now. And I laugh, because I think every organization I've been with or done consulting for in the last probably 5-10 years, I'm like, that's funny, because every time they're like, oh yeah, we have a 3-year plan. And then 6 months later, it's a different 3-year plan. And you're like, that's not how this works.
That's not how this works.
We have a cohort right now where, it's a 16-week activation sprint after you do the class. So they're actually like working on meaningful problems, as Tracey said, that the executive said were the things that they wanted them to work on. And at the exact same time, the executives brought in outside consultants to work on that. And they were upset, reasonably so. They were like, you sent me on this mission. I said, guys, this is what we're teaching you. What part can you take? And this happened. And the program sponsors and exec sponsors all acknowledged this work was meaningfully informed, because you guys were the listening mechanism for that they were never going to get. Mm-hmm. And then it becomes this real world situation. Like, it's always going to change, Katie. Like, even in a 16-week sprint, it's going to change. Executives are going to leave. The market's going to switch. And so it's that adaptability and being able to still celebrate what you brought to the organization. Absolutely. Also, we just have to say about the culture keeper, the other thing that we try to help people do is to make it cool and fun. So like the catalysts, like you want to be part of that movement because they're the fun kids.
Right? As polka dots.
I love it. Right?
That's polka dots.
And bling. She loves the bling.
I love
polka dot and
shiny
bling.
things.
Yeah.
I'm a full raccoon. Anything shiny, I want it. Awesome. Whatever it is.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. Okay. So first off, if a company wants to bring you all in to help with this movement, with this work, and to find and identify their catalysts and leverage them, where do they go? Where do they find you all?
Certainly you can go to our website, but also just feel free to ping us on LinkedIn.
Okay. Awesome. All right. And the last question I think we have is just, what is the one thing, or what are the couple actions or the couple things that, if you're an HR person, if you're a leader listening to this episode, what do you want folks to have heard from this conversation?
To the catalysts who are listening, you're not alone. That's, you are not broken. You are not alone. To the other folks listening out there, you have untapped potential that is the key to helping you be resilient and agile in the way that every organization needs. And just because you worked with one troublemaker that was more trouble than maker doesn't mean that they weren't an amazing, amazing investment with some fine tuning.
And
Awesome.
I would just add, one of our visions is to have the top 100 catalyst-friendly places to work. So you're all put on notice, because the companies that find those catalysts and know how to embrace them are going to outperform all their competitors. I would bet a lot of money on that.
Awesome. Jackie, what you got?
Just want everybody to know you're gonna be all right. It's really, you're gonna be just fine. Because like it is a lot. It's wild and woolly. It's already like change. Now you're changing the way that we're making change. I know that's a lot of change for some people, and I just want everybody to know you're gonna be fine. Everybody's gonna be just fine. You're gonna make it.
I like that. I will say, one of the things that I am going to take away from this episode is I'm like a raccoon. I like the bling. So that is one I think all of
That's
us
right.
can really cherish, Jackie. So I appreciate you sharing that with us.
And one time, if you ever have cocktails, I'll teach you how to make a raccoon trap, and it'll be all more clear.
Only in Waco, baby. Only in Waco.
Only in Waco. Only in Waco. The gift.
But I think that the piece for me, or there were quite a few nuggets here, but I think one of them that really stood out was the being able to identify these folks and realize that helping them with the storytelling, with giving them the right tools to actually be able to deliver and drive change. And like you said, Tracey, change is everywhere. This is not a new thing. And, I always joke when people are talking about change management, I'm like, oh, you mean business as usual? Like it's just, this is how we do this now. And so, thinking about it, of how you leverage and how you pull that energy and that insight and that intelligence together to be able to just rock the world. And I love, Shannon, I want you to come back with the research. After you've done the research, come back and tell us about the results from companies that are using this, and how they are doing on different measurements. Because I think you're spot on. If you can get folks aligned and, hey, this is what we can do and how much further we can push. And I think it is aligned so much to diversity, because this is where we bring in those new ideas, those fresh ideas, those scary ideas, and really make changes to companies that are big. The whole concept of the big, hairy, audacious goals, like that is what this group can do. So awesome. So Shannon, Tracey, thank you both so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. So fun.
Yes. And thank you so much. So folks, you don't know this, but we have had to work hard to make this episode happen, because all of us have been going in 20 different directions, all four of us. So glad that we finally were able to connect and record this, and we definitely need to stay in touch. So this is Katie Van Horn.
And this is Jackie Clayton. Bye.
Hi, my name is Sarah, and I want to tell you about my podcast called Can I Offer You Some Feedback? I'm a business consultant and executive coach with over 20 years experience in change management, leadership development, and naturally providing feedback to high performers. My podcast is for those of you who have a complicated relationship with feedback, whether giving, receiving, avoiding, or seeking. Feedback is essential for our development. In each episode, you'll hear from real people across industries with their ideas, perspectives, and best practices on feedback. I'll also be sharing business bites with you, simple explanations of organizational tools, management techniques, and leadership philosophies that will help you and your businesses thrive. You can listen to Can I Offer You Some Feedback on your favorite podcast app, or learn more at evergreenpodcasts.com.